it started to shapeshift. And it shapeshifted from a bipedal creature that was wide on the shoulders to a moose. It transformed itself into a moose. And a couple months after that, Fred had called me and told me that another guy in almost the exact same area had the exact same experience, except it went from a moose to a squatch. My name is Mark Franks, and I'm an Alaska resident for almost 31 years. And we're in North Pole, Alaska, which is 18 miles east of Fairbanks, Alaska. And I've lived in this particular region here since 2022. I lived in Fairbanks for a couple of years as well. And I was a cop when I was young. And then I dabbled in that a couple of different times. I've worked in the public service sector. After I was a police officer, I was actually a sheriff's deputy. Then I was also a firefighter paramedic, and I was a fire marshal as well with my department. And I've had numerous encounters with Sasquatch in Alaska. I've encountered them in the wintertime as far as seeing them visually. I've seen their tracks numerous times. I sent some emails to myself. If you want, later on I can show you some of those pictures that I have on my computer. I was born and raised the upper peninsula of Michigan, which is a very wooded, thick area. I'm basically, where I grew up was 100 miles due north of Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I lived in a county that was very high populous of deer and bear concentrations. I was baiting for bear when I was probably about 18 years old, even though I'd been hunting black bears for probably since I was 14. And this one particular day, the wind was blowing wrong at my blind, so I went to a different area to sit down, and I was sleepy because I worked a combination of security and I worked for the sheriff's department as well. So I took a nap. I woke up hearing something walking on all fours, and by the way that it was walking, I could tell it was maybe possibly sniffing the air, but I didn't know because I didn't have it in view. So I picked up my 30-06. And it got closer and closer. Then I heard it come off of all fours to stand up, two legs, which I assumed it was a bear wanting to sniff the air. So I pushed my safety off. And when what I assumed to be a bear came into view, I scoped it. And I was like, that's not a bear. I can't shoot that. If I shoot this, I'm going to go to prison. Because it had a human face, 100%, and it was large. The shoulders were probably maybe 48 inches across. I was looking at the head, and it was standing right next to a popple tree, which is an aspen. They're called aspen down the lower 48, or they call them Quakies. It was probably about maybe 15 inches on the butt. And there was an old skidder trail, where this trail was, and this creature literally stood up probably 18 inches to 2 feet, and it stood up, got behind that popple tree, and I'd seen the whole width of it just seconds before through the scope, and then when I put the rifle down, and then I was still looking at it. It was probably at a distance of maybe 45 yards, and it just stood up by that tree, and then it got in line with that tree, but just vanished 100%. And I heard it walk off, but I couldn't see it. So I don't know if it cloaked itself somehow or whatever it did. But I sat there for like I don't know, another 15 or 20 minutes, and I was just stunned. You know, I had when I was younger, a friend and I, we were staying at a cabin that my dad, teenagers, and we were out at night. We had our guns, and we just had our guns for having our guns, and coyotes were howling around us, but we could hear bipedal walking when the coyotes were howling. And I said, that ain't coyotes. And that's it. That's in a real particular area. It's called Felch, Michigan. There's a big flooded wood pond out in that area. It's called Jeans Pond. And that's if you did any research, there's a lot of sightings in that area as well. And of course, I've learned later on in life that when you hear the coyotes howling, that it's more than likely not coyotes. So that's kind of interesting as well. I have a unique capability where I can howl. I showed it to my father in the upper peninsula of Michigan. It's something I kind of perfected here, living here. But I can get wolves to howl back to me if I do the howls, which is just a interesting thing. And I was just like, this looks like a cross between a caveman and a modern day human with fur. It looked like fur to me. Now, since I've encountered them so many times, I realize it's hair, but I just thought it was fur, and I was just like stunned. I had no idea what I was looking at, but I knew that I couldn't pull the trigger on it because it wasn't a bear. There was not a snout whatsoever. It was a human face. The nose was wide and broad. The eyebrow ridge was prominent. I didn't look for length of arms or hands, you know. I didn't look for claws. I was just focused on it because I had my scope on it. I had 30-06 in my hands, and I was like, I was going to smoke it right between the eyes when I saw it, and then as soon as I saw it, I was like, whoa! I slid my tank safety back on, and you know, but it was like perfect. It was like a dirty looking human. It was not really dark brown, kind of like a light brown color, and that's predominantly the color of the ones I've seen in Alaska as well. And I've seen them over 65 times in Alaska here. I've seen them in Montana, and I've had encounters in Washington as well. And I used to leave in the wintertime from here to go drive truck down in the States. So one time I was in California, and I was driving up on, I picked up a load of timber in Eureka, California, which is a classic spot because I was on the Pacific Coast Highway. I think it was the 101, and because I had earlier in the day, I'd run from Spokane down to the Budweiser plant in California. Then they just dispatched me to go back up. So I was driving through the redwoods and so forth, and I'd been on that road before, and they wanted me to get this load, and I was going to sleep up on top of where this pass was. So I was trying to get my tarps on and get everything strapped down properly after they got my trailer loaded. So I was pulling up this spot to pull and grade on this thing, and it's called getting in the basement when you get into the lowest gears of the truck, because I was loaded, you know. And I had a spotlight on the side of my tractor because the headlights, because I'm at the switchback, but I wanted to park right up on top of the pass. It's a beautiful spot. Well, I was getting up there was already a truck there. So I was like, crap. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going back down the other side, and I'll pull in one of the other spots. Well, my spotlight that I had on, because I wanted to see if they're, you know, because my headlights were like this, it was like this. Well, I came around this last switchback before I got up on top. My spotlight pans over, and I see a tall one and a smaller one. And they were brown. And when I saw the brown color, I thought they were elk standing on their hind legs getting pine cones from the trees. because I had seen them do that when I used to hunt in Idaho and Montana. So the spotlight passes over them, and I'm like, holy crap, those are not elk. And the one that was the biggest one, which I'm assuming was a male, was probably 7.5, 8 feet tall. And the one standing next to it was probably between 5.5 to 6 feet tall. So it was either a small female or it was a kid. And same thing. It was as soon as I saw the brown color, because at first, I thought it was elk, but then when I saw it, they were saying, and the male one had its hands up, and he was reaching. I'm assuming it was a he, but the other one had its hands down along the side. And I'm driving a truck, and I'm probably going only 20 miles an hour, 22 maybe even 15. But when I got up to the top, and immediately that it goes to a switch back down, I flip my Jake brakes on, and I was like, holy crap, did I just see what I think I saw? And I was like, oh, I was going all the way down, and I had a 45 with me, 45 ACP pistol, and I was like, wow, that's like crazy. So I got maybe 10 or 15 miles from the summit, because I was tired, because I had started out that morning in I had come from Spokane, went to California. I had downtime. I was off duty. I think I'd got some sleeper time as well. But anyways, I needed to sleep, so I pulled into this one spot where it kind of like a rest area, but it was big enough where I could pull my truck and trailer in there and then get it staged to be pointed back out. But the next morning, after I did that, because I literally slept with my head on my 45, the next morning I always had to call into dispatch. Well, I hadn't talked to anybody, and the first thing I do, and I get these guys on the phone, I'm like, hey, I saw a effing Bigfoot last night, and they're like, what? I said, I saw a Bigfoot, and they're like going, okay. And they thought I was drunk or high or something. So that actually really torqued me off. I said, no, I'm telling you, I saw 2 of them last night, right on the top of this pass. Anyways, they just laughed and scoffed at me. So we always talk about seeing bears, and and when someone says a bear, I ask them if it's grizz or black bear, but we've never actually discussed that. And in 2003, I was running fish on a Homer down into British Columbia. Then I would deadhead empty down into Seattle, SeaTac area, pick up groceries, and I almost always bring them back to Fairbanks, sometimes down to Anchorage, sometimes down to Kenai Peninsula. And I talked to a lot of different guys in the truck stops in British Columbia and in the Yukon territories, and nobody ever told me that they ever saw one specifically. But we talked about seeing bears often, and I would see grizzly bears very, very often making that particular run. On a grizzly, they have a hump that's like in the middle of their thoracic region. And I've only seen a Bigfoot on all fours once, and it was at night, and it was a very tall creature. I had a 2010 Jeep Commander. I was down on the Kenai Peninsula, and it was dark, but it was above the hood by probably 1.5 feet, 18 inches, and my wife at the time was with me, and I said, what is that? I mean, because it was literally 2 or 3 feet in front of the hood of the Jeep, because I'd slowed way down. I was going from like 55, I'd slowed way down to like 10 or 15 miles an hour. And it was like an exaggerated movement, but fluid. So that was very unique to me. And when I had the encounter in 2019 down in, yes, it was 2019, same thing. This creature was bipedal, but it literally moved 80 yards in 2 or 3 seconds. The snow depth was probably 2.5 to 3.5 feet deep, but it moved so fluidly, it's almost like it glided across the snow, which is very, very strange, But the difference between a grizzly bear kind of shuffles its feet, and there's a whole lot of movement that's going on. So if you hunt grizzly bears, you don't ever shoot them in the heart and lungs first. You want to take out a drive unit. The drive unit is in the shoulders. So a grizzly bear, you want to take out one shoulder if possible and a secondary shoulder if possible. So a front and a rear, and then put one in the boiler room to bring it down. That one that I saw moving at night was very fluid, but exaggerated movement. So when it got to the side where my wife was in the passenger side, it was on the end of this guy's driveway, it stood up, and it stood up to a height of probably 7 or 7.5 feet, and it had red eyes. And I was like, and I had the same gun in my pocket that I have in right now. It's a Car 9mm, and that's all that I had for a firearm. I always have a firearm on me, like always. And I was like, are you seeing that? Did you see that? And then it was standing there. It looked at us glowingly, maybe 7, 8, 10 seconds, and then turned bipedally. And it didn't run away, but it was moving when it was walking away. The one that my wife and I saw when we were, driving to Homer to get groceries, where I passed it, because I thought it was a dude walking in Carhartts. It was like the light brown style Carhartts. And I turned around, then I turned around again, and I grabbed a set of binos that I had. And my wife was just at the time developing some vision problems. So I handed the binos off to her, and I said, look at it. And it was super tall. That one was probably almost 8 feet tall. And I only saw its face for a second, but when it was walking away from me, literally the ears were sticking off its head like this, because it was phenomenal. Because when I took the binoculars back from her, I spun up the focus on it, and I was like, look at the ears. They look like radar domes. I mean, they were sticking off the head a long ways. And the hair kind of looked like stringy, kind of like a brown stringy hair, but the ears, I mean, they were literally like sticking out like this off the side. And super, super skinny. I'd never seen one that skinny before. Because the ones that I would see when I drive back and forth from Ninilchik to Valdez, the ones I'd see standing in the creek, see them standing on the side of mountains and stuff, they were big. They were always big. I mean, they were as my thighs big, and tall and skinny. But this one, so I tried to drive on to where the little trail was, but they have these things called Kelly humps that they make so vehicles can't get in there. This one walked right over, and I only had the same gun in my pocket, and it sat down right next to a telephone pole. It looked at us directly. We were probably 40 yards apart, and I was thinking at the time, is this going to try to pull power from the power pole to disappear? Because I'd read all sorts of different things by that time, But that was a very unique one. But it was like this color brown. It was a very light color brown. I'm trying to think of the exact year. Probably would have been, I still living in Anchorage then, so 2015 or 16. I was off by it's a state recreation area called Willow River. You can put into the little Willow River. So I was standing there, and I had a very small caliber rifle with me. It was just after moose season. I might have been looking for varmints or varmint calling or something, but I was down at the boat landing because I had been there a couple of weeks prior during regular moose season, and I was going to meet my buddies the next day over at Willow Swamp, which is over in this area called Deshka Landing, and it was probably 3 miles from where I was parked at down by the river. And anyways, I couldn't fit in my Jeep 100%, so I'd stick my feet out the back. And it was pretty late at night, and I drank a beer earlier, so I had to get up to pee once, and then my feet were sticking out, and I was sleeping for a while. Then I could hear something walking around my Jeep, walking on feet, bipedal. And I was thinking, you got to be an idiot if you're walking around some guy's vehicle, because everybody's got a gun in Alaska, multiples, always. They're always on me. I'm always armed. I'm never not armed. Even at work, I have a firearm within close proximity to me, always. So anyways, I was like, you guys got to be stupid or something. They were like walking really close to my Jeep. And I said out loud, you guys got to be stupid. And then they like moved off to the side. And I started thinking, because of the crunch of the underfoot, the sound of them walking, I was like, that's got to be some big dudes. Because I had spent, at that particular time, I had been out hunting, and then I had cooked on my table, and there had been some other people there, but I think they left. But there might have still been one vehicle there, because people can launch their boats and stuff from there. Anyways, when I said, you guys got to be stupid to be walking around in my camp, because at first I thought it was somebody either coming to mess with me or steal my stuff, because I have my cookware stuff out on the picnic table still. Anyways, I was back in that same area a couple of weeks later, and I was standing by the river, and I was glassing across the way. I might have let out a few varmint calls. So I could hear this talking, and I couldn't tell exactly, it was a speech. And I was like going, I was thinking, this is all state land. How can somebody be building a cabin? Because I thought I heard like pounding noises, just a couple. And I was like going, okay, maybe they got a in holding within this state land, because it's all state land in that area. Anyways, I kept hearing this talking, so I kept walking closer and closer. So I literally walked down to where the boat launch is, which is on the Little Willow, which feeds into the edge of the Susitna River. And I could hear him talking, but I couldn't hear him well. And I couldn't differentiate sounds, but it was like communication, 100%. And it sounded like these two guys were maybe 10 or 15 feet apart, but I couldn't discern the words. And then I walked even further past that. So now I'm in the woods right next to where the river is, and it's actually a creek. It's not very, very wide, even though they run airboats up and down it from where they can launch up off where the Parks Highway is in Willow. So anyways, I was walking further and further, and then I was like going, stop. At that point, I felt like I was being lured. And I was like, this is not right. And it was a Sunday afternoon, probably about 4 in the afternoon after moose season. So it still wasn't going to get dark for hours, but I felt lured. So when I got home, I got on Google and I flew over with the Google satellite tool, looking, using fresh satellite image to see if somebody was building a cabin there. Nope. I flew all the way to the Parks Highway, up and down. I was basically kind of doing like grid quadrant searches, and there wasn't anything new there. So I kind of thought they were luring me, and I thought of that when I was doing it. So it was the day after Valentine's Day in 2019. So I was smoking a cigar, and I was just driving around while my wife was doing stuff at the Nilchik Senior Center. And I'd seen all these tracks, so I got out and I'd taken pictures, and I can show you pictures of those. I can show you those pictures that I took, along with the pictures that I took of the Squatch. I had a really good phone. I had a cat phone, which has FLIR on it, but I didn't have that phone with me because I'm a mechanic, and I beat the heck out of my phones really, really bad. So I had a crappy phone on me. And I also have my binoculars on. So that particular day, I was wearing a black fleece jacket, a black hat. I had a 40 cal in a shoulder holster, and I always carry, whenever I carry that style of weapon, I carry 65 rounds of ammo with me, three 15-round mags and one in the pipe. So I got out of my Jeep, and I had taken pictures of these other tracks here, and those from where the plow had gone by, you could see them. They're like this big, and you could see like where when the foot squashed down, the arch made like made a definite sort of a deal, and you could see like the toes too. And the tracks they're 18 inches long or so. I seen these other ones that was on the side of the road where the encounter actually happened. That those were round, but they're definitely not moose because they're big. They're about this big, and you could see them good because of the shadow. But the space between them was not very much. But the space between these other ones I'm talking about, there's like a 5.5, 6 foot stride. And you can tell that they're deep. They went deep. So anyways, I got off, walked over this little Kelly hump deal, and was standing on the seismic trail. And I'm standing there smoking this cigar, and I see this guy walk out about 150 yards from where I'm standing. And he just went back, he kind of waved like this. And it was actually, I was like, man, that guy's giant, like big. And he took probably a step and a half on the seismic trail, and I'm like, that is not a dude, because big, like big, So the minimum size for moose in Alaska when you shoot them is 50 inches. So I'm like going, that guy is wider than 50 inches across the shoulders. And I could see when he was turning to look at me, I could see the conical shape really hit. You cannot see it very good in the pictures that I took. And I'd taken, so I was looking at it, and I was like, holy crap, I'm taking the binoculars, and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, wow. So this thing, it turned and faced me, and was facing me from like 150 yards. And I was looking at it for quite a long time. And then I was like going, oh, I should take pictures. And I'm like, oh, I got my piece of crap phone. So I dig in my pocket and put the binos down. Well, when I was digging in my pocket, then it ran at me. It ran directly at me from 150 yards to 80 yards in a blink of an eye. Less than 3 seconds. And you can tell that there's snow there on this trail, and it's very stomped out. There's some moose tracks in there, but you can tell. You'll see in the pictures how many different tracks there are there. So the pictures number from on my phone, they go from like they go from 813 to 818. And I had taken a couple other ones, but I had accidentally deleted them because I had to get to Wi-Fi to get them from my phone. And somehow I had deleted them. But my wife said that there was a mother standing within 40 yards of me holding a baby that you could see that was off in the brush that I never even saw because I was focused on this other one. So after I'd taken the last picture, I was standing, so you can see between the legs real good. At first, the legs look skinny, but you don't see the arms. The arms are like behind, which is really weird because I wanted to see the big dangling arms, A buddy of mine that now lives down in southeast, down on Prince of Wales Island, which there's encounters down there all the time, he told me, he goes, it looks like it's wearing a cape. And I was like going, yeah, maybe. Because I've only shown those pictures to probably 10, 15 people, family at first, and then some hunting buddies. As that encounter was lengthening in time, it started to shapeshift. And it shapeshifted from a bipedal creature that was wide on the shoulders to a moose. It transformed itself into a moose. And a couple months after that, Fred had called me and told me that another guy in almost the exact same area had the exact same experience, except it went from a moose to a squatch, almost in the exact same area. So that was pretty wild. It's uh, like a blanket came off of it and went on the ground, and I didn't even think to take pictures of it because I'd already taken a bunch of pictures. You can only blow it up so much. I mean, I think it was a piece of crap Samsung tiny phone, a real tiny one. It looked like a flowing robe that was on the ground to it. And then I was like going, I could hear a trailer, a vehicle and a trailer coming. So I was like going, if I turn my eye away, it's going to be gone. And then I was like, I couldn't stand it anymore because, this is happening and it's only 80 yards in front of me. And I ran from 150 yards to like 80 yards. And, I had my hand on my gun. I'm pretty sure I didn't pull it out because it was only a 40 caliber, which wouldn't do crap. But I was like, so finally I could tell this vehicle was real close to where my Jeep was just by the sound of the trailer that was dragging and rattling and so forth. Anyway, so when I got about even where my Jeep is, I looked at that, looked back at back at the road in my Jeep, and then when I turned back, it's gone. I can't say I've experienced that 100% because I don't know if it was my mind talking to them. I can't say I've experienced that. So I would say we've had a communication level. So the one last year, well, in July of 2024, I went back to Michigan to help my mom get her house ready to be sold. And I bought some guns from my dad's estate, and then I had some guns that were there as well. So I came back to Alaska, worked on my birthday. Then the next day, I went up to the shooting spot up on this Steese Highway. And as soon as I pulled in, when I was setting up targets, I could tell that they were there. And when I at the far rear point of this quarry, I was setting up the target, and I was like, "Hey, you guys don't need to F with me." I said, "I'm just here to shoot. I'm not going to do nothing." I could hear a howl, and I looked straight up because it was probably maybe 70, 80 yards back from the edge of the cliff I was at. I heard it howl. I said, "Okay, you made your presence known. Good to go." So I pulled out a 7mm shooting times at Westerner and a 338 Magnum, and I had shot those a couple of times. And I have these shooting muffs. I'll actually let you put them on and use them because they amplify the sound. But then when there's a loud crack, it compresses the sound. I could hear them walking around me, and it freaked me out bad. And it sketched me out so bad, I went and took the 44 mag. I had it sitting on the seat. I took it off the seat and put it right next to where I was at, shooting across the hood of my of my truck. Anyways, they were walking. I could hear them walking, and they were literally like walking behind me. I could hear them within a couple of feet. So it sketched me out so bad. I grabbed my plugs that I have on my hanging on my mirror. I put those in, took a couple more shots, and then I was like going, no wonder why I can't hear crap. These don't muffle nothing, So then I grabbed my other pair of shooting muffs, and I put those on, and I said, now I can't hear nothing. During that time, when I heard them right behind me, I stopped twice and turned around and looked because they sounded like they were right behind me, and one of them touched me. And where it touched me, it felt like a burn. And within, probably 2 hours from that, I felt like I had radiation poisoning, and I was sick for about 4 weeks. I literally felt like I had radiation sickness from being in a nuclear blast, sort of sickness, I was sick. It was crazy. I was nauseous. I wasn't lucid in the mornings when I would wake up. I had discombobulated thoughts, and I'm a very focused, driven sort of individual always. I have to take care of numerous pieces of equipment at my job. In the winter times, I manage people. And in the summertime, I don't manage people, but I still have a very intense job. All of our pieces of equipment basically get used 20 hours a day because we turn commercial flights, and it has to be running. We don't have spares and backups. I mean, we have a couple, but I'm very, very focused. And I wasn't focused when I was with this sickness after being touched, which was crazy. And so I didn't go back up to that area again until September. And when I went up there in September, so there's this spot, it's right at mile 41 of this Steese Highway. There's like this curve, and there's this quarry. I got on this spot where my wife and I had been there previously, because I shoot there a lot. She was taking pictures of some tundra swans, and I said, hey, get some good pictures of those. I said, blow it up. And I said, I told her, I said, send them to me when you get home. So as she is sitting there taking pictures, I said, why don't you get out and take pictures instead of shooting them through the windshield? Because I had a cracked windshield. I grabbed those binos, and I was like, about 150 yards beyond the tundra swans, I could see a family of 3 that were swimming. And I was like I said, zoom in past the tundra swans and tell me what you're looking at. So she's like going, oh, I can't believe it. And I said, I'm telling you, there they are again. So I was looking, and I was dialing back and forth. And so then I happened to glance over. There's like a little island from about 70 or 80 yards from where we're at. And I said, hey, Barb, look over there on that island. I said, there's a watcher standing there, right there, standing there watching us. And he wasn't as big as the watchers that I've seen down in Valdez up in the mountains, but he was still a watcher. And then we left because we'd already been shooting. That was like crazy. But so then in September, I'm trying to remember. So that must have been in 2023 when I had my wife with me. But then last year in September, I hadn't been back to that area since I got touched on the back. And a couple days after I got touched, I looked in the mirror in my other bathroom, and you could see like a burn mark. So that's right then, I was thinking demon. These are demon or Nephilim, and I've thought that ever since. So September, I was going shooting. I was coming around right where this curve is. I look, and there's like a 10.5 footer, the biggest one I've ever seen. And I'm telling you what, his shoulders are even bigger than the one that I saw down at mile 70 Steese Ponds. I mean, we're talking, maybe the biggest moose I've ever shot is a 57-incher, and this was 65 plus across the shoulder width, absolute monster, and 10.5 feet tall, just giant. So I was like this. I turned my truck around because it's right on a curve, and then I sat there looking at it, and then I turned my truck around again and was in the original position that I was at, just further back up the road, because there's a house or a cabin that's within maybe 200 yards of where this road is, that goes into this quarry. And I always see vehicles there, but I've never pulled in there or in anything. So I don't know if people live there or it's a cabin or whatever the deal is, but I saw that giant bastard, and I was like, holy smokes. And then I still went shooting, because I'm not going to let them interfere with what I do for my regular stuff. There's these 2 humps because there's like a gate there, so they're like built up humps. So the hump that's closest to where the chain and cable gate is probably 8.5 to 10 feet. 8 or 9 feet tall, and probably maybe 15 feet across. And it's got grass growing on it. So there's one there. Then there's a separation about 40 or 50 yards. Then there's another one of those. So that's where I determined it to be 10.5 feet tall. But again, my legs, when I was fat, they were like massive. My thighs used to be massive. And this thing's thighs, the big thing in the 80s was the ice skater, Eric Heiden. So it was well known he had 40-inch thighs because his muscles and his legs were so big. 40 inches would have been a toothpick. And you look at me, I still got a pretty broad leg here, hamstring and thigh. We're talking like tree trunk style. And you can see the fur, the hair, it's like long. It's like, it's like anywhere from like where the buttocks were, to like 10 inches to like 18, 20-inch strands of hair. But you could see through the hair, you could see the flesh. And I just looked at it in awe. I never even thought to take a picture because I've seen him so many different times. But that guy was big. And the one that I saw at mile 70, Steve's Ponds, where it punched a hole into the beaver lodge, and had seen the beaver lodge when I was reloading the 357 that I just shot, because there was the one beaver. I kept laughing. I told my wife, I said, why do you think that beaver's swimming right there? And I was standing in the door, open door of my truck, because the bugs were bad. My wife was sitting in there. She had the air conditioning running too, because I just bought that truck. I caught the flash of movement out of my eye. And I didn't realize it then. I'd gone back looking in my mind's eye after that encounter. But, he was holding stuff like this in its arm, but that one was jet black. And from the side of the head, because I saw the side of the ear, all the way across the top of the deltoid area of the shoulder, that was 30 to 30 inches wide. And then, the head. And I screamed at that one, a whole bunch of expletives at that one. And that one also had giant thighs and was very, very big. But I'm thinking, looking back in my mind's eye over that incident, it had 2 or 3 beavers in its arms and hands because it was carrying them like this. Yeah, that was pretty wild encounter there. I told one buddy, the guy I told you about that says, I'm never going out in the woods with you. Yeah, because he goes, you are a magnet. And I'm like, I know. I have come across, for lack of a better term, what's called nests. They're almost always within a structure that has fallen down. So like a tree that is uprooted and something off from that. There's one real close to my house here within a couple miles. And then I found one last year when I saw one standing when I was running my snow machine. I didn't like the spot I was coming into. I thought it was like a choke point. So I backed up, turned around. When I turned around, I was going back out. I sensed the presence of one, and I looked to the left, and I saw one standing about 70 yards in the brush. And it was plain as day, giant head, saw the hair, and he was standing next to him, standing above like a domed geodesic dome, but it was made out of leaves, which was really strange because everything else around it was covered in snow. There was snow on pine trees that were laden and so forth. So they had been in that because there was no snow on it, and that's what actually caught my eye. So I first saw that because I saw the light coming from behind it. It was probably maybe about 11 in the morning. So the sunlight was pretty good, so it, excuse me, it takes about in the wintertime 10:30 for it to break the horizon. Then it gets up on the horizon and then never really gets very much above it. It just kind of stays at eye level. But after I looked at it and I said, yeah, I see you. And I don't know if I said it out loud or if I said it in my head, but I looked at that dome structure and there was no snow on it. So to me, that seems like there's body heat that's being put out, and that body heat is going through the top of that leaves. And I could tell it was leaves and maybe some interwoven stuff, which just actually reminded me, this September when I was hunting, I found over and over, I found interwoven, I got pictures I got to show you as well. I was down this one spot. I had sensed their presence, and when I came out, because I took my side-by-side down this spot, they marked it on the road, because I could I could sense them, and I was moose calling, and I only drove in about 70 or 80 yards, and it was pretty wet where I was at. I sat there about 20 minutes, maybe half hour. This guy comes walking out from where I was at, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you screwed up your hunting." He goes, "No, you didn't screw up nothing." So I was like, "Okay, cool." So then he left, and I stayed about 20 more minutes. I made a couple more moose calls. So I took a picture of. They made a sign on the ground, and I took a picture of it before I drove in there. Well, when I'd come out, there was more sign right where this guy had walked out at. It's crazy. I got the actual pictures to show you. My dad was a chiropractor, and he very much in tune to tapping in with the body's computer and so forth. And I've worked in numerous different medical professions as well, other than what I do now. I think it's got some sort of a healing deal, or my frequency, my vibrational frequency that I operate off of is a little bit different. Could be an attractiveness to it of some sort, like a healing frequency, or like a special drum frequency that's like a 432 megahertz cycle. I don't know. It could be something like that. As I get older, I cannot operate electronic equipment very well. So I have an older GPS, and I have an affinity for ham radios. I have numerous ones. There's a weather radio there that I carry. I carry an AirNav radio when I'm out in the woods by myself. So if I can hear a plane, I can talk to them. Doesn't matter if they're 30 or 40 miles away, because I'll be transmitting right up towards them. But any electronic gear, as I get older, it doesn't work right around me. So I've got some sort of an energy field or something, and I think that comes from my father, because my sisters kind of have some of the same abilities that my dad had as well. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I bought the side-by-side last spring in April, and then I'd taken it on a couple of pretty wild trips and so forth. So then I just like to ride it because it's like a no-interest loan, so it only cost me like $12 a day, $12.75. So it stays parked for a while. I'm like, I got to go ride this toy, So anyways, I took it for a rip, so I went down this way and then cut back behind here. So the Tanana River is right over here, within a mile, and it goes all the way along. So this area is called the Dike Road. So I had come through this area in the spring when there was still snow on the ground, and I was like, oh, this will be a great trail in the summer, after everything dries up, and then it'll be better. So I started going down it, but it had been raining, and it was just terrible mud and stuff. And I got 30-inch tires on there, big knobby tires. This thing can go anywhere. I was like, wow, this is getting pretty ugly. And the bugs were super, super bad. Just terrible, terrible bad. So I was like, I need to turn around, because I was looking at this giant mud hole, and I was like, I don't want to really get stuck. I hadn't used my winch yet. On and on and on, even though I have all sorts of snatch blocks and special recovery gear. So I turned around in this spot to get out. So I pulled up right in front of this spot. I turned like this and then turned like that. And I seen two of them sitting in front of me, 12 feet from the front of the machine. And they had massive heads. They were probably this big around. And I could see, they were really close together. I could see about from the belly button up, even though I never actually saw the belly button. And I looked up at them, and it took me a minute I'm like, what am I looking at? Because it was so close, but they were in the dark timber, because I was on a trail and there's alders and stuff. They were behind the alders. And of course, the foliage was pretty high. And I looked right at them and I said, wow, I can't believe you guys are sitting in there, because it was kind of warm out too. I said, the bugs got to be terrible in there. And they just were like stoic. They just looked straight ahead, no emotion, no response to me talking to them, anything like that. And then I backed out of there when I got dead even with where they were at. I was like, the hair was standing up on me. So I don't know if they shifted the energy, if they were cloaking themselves, and like, I mean, they literally were like a transient fixed stare. You know, I mean, I looked right in their eyes, looked right at them. I mean, they're 12 feet in front of my machine. And then, but when I got dead even with them back on the trail, which probably would have been a distance of maybe 20, 25, 28 feet, man, hair on my back of my neck stood up, and the hair on my arms just stood up like 100%, just like bowstring. In my first wife's culture, where she was a Yupik Eskimo, which is an offshoot from a Yupik Eskimo, which is kind of in the same. So the Yupik is kind of in the same area where Fred is from, but because it's still Southwest Alaska, but he is from a different clan and not tribe, 100%. But I've spent an extensive amount of time in that area, which is Dillingham, and then that's the Bristol Bay area. Then I've also worked out at Naknek and King Salmon, and I've spent a lot of time over there as well than that platinum mine that I told you I was at. A lot of people don't realize that every single clan or tribe in North America, there is a separate name for Bigfoot in their own language. Every single tribe, you know. And people say they don't exist. I'm like, you are the stupidest people on earth. Everybody's got stories. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a timber cruiser, a logger, a hunter, you know, and the thing is, why would you lie and make that up? Because once you see them, your head is on a swivel 100% for the rest of your life. You cannot do anything without seeing them, without thinking about seeing them. And then, you're projecting that in your mind, and then that's pareidolia. No, it's not. No, it's not. I can show you pictures right now. I can show you pictures of tracks. You know, these different people that are looking, you know, for the trees interwoven. That's just one single part of it. These people spend their entire lives in the woods. They are masters at hiding themselves and remaining hidden no matter what. So it's just goofy that people, they don't exist. I've never seen one. Well, who gives a rat's ass? They absolutely exist, 110%. And then, you know, people, hunters and guides and different people, well, like, how come we never find any bones? Well, they probably bury their dead because they're an offshoot of humans. They're either old world, you know, from like Moses' time before the flood, and they have some human mixture to that. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. But you combine what you know, theological stuff, and what you see. If you put any sort of dead animal in the woods, in less than 7 days, that thing's gone. The ravens are pecking on it. The ground animals are pecking on it. The rodents are chewing on it. The weasels are on it. You know, everything takes a harvest of everything that's laying dead in the woods. So if you're some sort of a thinking species, you would think they're going to bury their own dead. You know, that's just like a common sense thing to me. My dad liked to do missions things because he was a chiropractor, and he hunted all over the world. But he was hunting down in Arizona, and he paid like a trespass fee to these guys on the reservation because he'd done different work on the reservations. My dad wanted to go cougar hunting. He hired these two brothers. One of them was in Vietnam, and one of them was like a ranger or something. You know, serious badass men, you know, that had been in wars and so forth, fought combat and so forth. One was a Marine and one was the other deal. But they were on this res, and they were like, hey, my dad's like going, hey, there's some good arroyos down there, and there's a couple of good draws. Let's go down there. And these Indian guides were like, no, we can't go down there. And my dad's like, why? And he goes, well, we just can't go down there. So then they went to this other spot, and my dad looked back, and my dad was like obsessed with binoculars, kind of like the way I am. I have a bunch of different pairs, some very high quality ones. He was looking over at where this draw is, and he goes, what is that over there? And he goes, that's why we can't go over there. He goes, what is that? He goes, that's the houses for the little people. And my dad goes, how little are we talking? And he goes, because those look like they're 18 to 20 inches tall. And he goes, yeah, that's the little people. He goes, that's the littlest of the little people. We're not allowed to go over there. They were in this other spot, just getting ready to go hunting. And all of a sudden, these two guys freaked out. And they said, we got to go right now. We got to go, we got to go, we got to go. And because my dad had walked off like maybe 70 or 80 yards from where they were. I don't know if he was looking for scat sign or things in the brush, but those two brothers heard a howl, and they absolutely freaked out 100%, and they said they had to go right then, because my dad was always a non-believer. And then when I got those pictures that I'll show you, I'm like, what do you think of that? You know, I mean, it's just crazy. I never really sought them out, but I would howl, and I don't do that anymore. I used to literally pee off my porch in Ninilchik, drinking beer, and pee off the porch and howl. And a couple days after that, I sensed that they were there, because I had all sorts of encounters down there. Literally saw one sitting up in a tree branch, on a birch tree branch that was about this big, about 80 yards from my house. And then in the spring of that year is a story where I told you I woke up and I saw like a juvenile sleeping outside my window, and I grabbed that 44 mag, and I rested the handle right on my wife's hip, and I said, don't move. I said, there's a squatch right outside our window. I said, I'm going to get it, because I had the window open. And I went up, stood by the window, and I said, you have to leave right now, or I'm going to shoot you. And I put the window down, and then I grabbed my wife, and I said, get over here on the side, and I put her like where the furnace was. We're in a mobile home. I said, stand here. And I went and looked out the window, looking back this way from the porch, and it was gone. But you know, I'm definitely a magnet. So to me, it's like there's two people back there, because remember I told you the guy came walking out, mm-hmm. And then and this was right where I went in at, you know, because this one was probably 20 yards from where I actually went in at. And that's about a 75 or 80 degree slope.
Oh, wow.
And I took another picture with my snow machine windshield in it to give you a definition. You see see the distance? See that?
Yeah.
Look at those tracks. Is that nuts or what?
Incredible.
So you can, if you look at it from this spot, you can see the head's conical. So now I'll blow it in. It's just like I'm actually just starting to shake, because I've never showed any of these to anybody in person other than a couple of my buddies. Is that crazy? But see how you can't see the arms?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think it was pre-staging to do the shape shifting. The thing to watch is to notice how the space between the legs changes. That's how you can tell that, mm-hmm. that these pictures are different. Even though I took them, you know, just mere seconds apart. So now you think back how that other picture was just a minute ago. Look how much wider this thing is now. You see how that is so different?
Oh.
You see how that's, and this is the second picture.
Yeah.
Look how different that is. And again, you can't see any arm, but you can see the conical head. You see that? You see the shape of the head there?
Yep.
Wow. It's like morphine as each one of these pictures that I was taking. I was like click, 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 click. There was just like a few seconds between each time I actually did it.
100% conical. Absolutely.
Yep. Pretty wild. Look how deep those are, and you can see the foot. And this is like snow here that got flung from the plow,
Mm-hmm.
So this is like really, really close. I'm always looking. I always got binos. I'm always looking up in the mountains for stuff. And I was looking for bears, and it was springtime, because the grizzly bears, they punch out of the snow like in April. They come out of their dens, and then you can see these massive tracks. Just massive. And then they go back to the den a couple of times, but they start moving further and further away from the den because they're looking for sheep or goats that are killed in avalanches or slipped and fell. And they clean up the gullies and so forth because they've been in hibernation. They're starving. So I was looking up, and I was like going, oh, there's a bear. I was like, that ain't a bear. I'm like, oh, there's another one. There's another one. So what it was a mother and two kids, and they were sliding. They were sliding between the mother's legs and sliding down the snow. And I'm watching them for like, these are squatch that I'm watching. I'm watching them from probably a mile away through my binos. And then I'm like, I looked about 200 yards to the left of that, there's a watcher standing there. And then I looked another 200 yards the other way, there's another watcher standing there. Something told me to look up. I looked up probably 300 yards away. I was like, those got to be rocks. Those can't be squatch. So I asked the guy that lived there, I said, hey, have you ever driven your sled up over the top from here? And I explained the spot. He says, yeah. He goes, that's how we get up through the pass. I said, are there two giant rocks there? He says, no. And I got those pictures too. But it's very, very hard to see. And I blew it up, and I drew a line. And of course I can see it, but people that just look at it go, you can't tell crap, But they were actually sliding down from this spot here. And there's a watcher over here, and there's a watcher over here. These are the two spots that I asked the guy that lived there. I said, are there two giant rocks there? And he says, no, because they literally drive their sleds right up the face of this spot.